Hey everyone, it's Kenlyn, and welcome back to my channel for the Astro and Energy Report for the week of March 9th. This is a very big week, probably the biggest week in 2025, because March is the biggest month of 2025. And what I mean by big is impactful. It's really changing the course of our trajectories in the places where Pisces and Virgo are in your chart. And I want to say too, that everything is functioning like a symphony. So those areas of your chart are getting activated this week, but it's all so symphonic, meaning that other places in your chart can really experience the change because of the angles, the geometry. But just know that everything is functioning for you and not against you, no matter how rough the ride is. Chances are by now you can see the writing on the wall. You know what's happening in your life because this full moon eclipse is happening during a Venus retrograde. It will initiate a Mars retrograde. And we were just through a Cancer retrograde. I mean, a Mars in Cancer retrograde. So we've had many opportunities to see what's not working and to course correct. And this is the week that it all happens. And it's happening. It's been happening. And we have 6 months from this time to the next eclipse to experience how things want to change in our lives. Now, the metaphor that I'm using for this full moon lunar eclipse is the mandala. If you've ever seen a bunch of Tibetan Buddhist monks making a mandala, they take these fine grains of colored sand and they make a beautifully intricate image with that sand. And it can be small and it can be, I've seen it as a whole big table with monks all around the table, spending detailed time and energy putting together something of beauty. It's extraordinary. And when they're done, what they do is they honor it, they celebrate it, they take in how beautiful that creation is. And then they take their hand and they wipe it. And because it's sand, all of it mixes together and the image becomes blurry and it no longer exists. It's dissolution. And that's the energy of this Pisces stellium, late degrees of Pisces, dissolution. That's where the sun and Saturn and the North Node and Neptune are hanging out opposite the moon in Virgo, experiencing and eclipsing like a reboot. It's bright and light, and then the curtains go down, and then the curtains open again. And who you are in that moment of the curtain reopening is a different person, new assignment. And you may not know all of what that means, and it doesn't matter because things will come to your conscious awareness, and they probably are already, as the sun makes a conjunction with each one of them in Pisces, starting to illuminate the answer. And that Mercury retrograde that starts on the 14th of March, right after this eclipse, will give you time to reconsider, to reflect with your conscious mind what just happened. So that's a 3-week period that Mercury goes retrograde, following the same path as Venus. And I already did a video on Venus, but it's huge. These are personal planets. It's how we experience life. And our job is to understand what was unconscious, subconscious, that's now being made conscious so that we can course correct. You know, the signature of this full moon lunar eclipse in Virgo is completion, dissolution, letting go, loss, endings. And we know that by 2 things. One is that it's connected to the South Node. Right after the eclipse, it's going to conjunct the South Node. This is that release mechanism. This is the past. It's like stuff we cannot take with us. It's also a full moon. So we know full moons are release mechanisms and eclipses are on steroids. And there's also the sun and those planets and points in the late degrees of Pisces, which is the period of the letting go, the finality. You know, when you're born and you're in the birth canal, you're really letting go of that prior incarnation, that in the womb. Like I don't have to do anything. I'm not like out there in the world yet. And then you come through that birth canal and it's not fun. It's contraction and expansion, and all this goop on you. And you come through the birth canal opening your lungs. I am. And that's the experience of what's happening inside this orchestra of the Virgo and Pisces and the Pisces stellium, and then Venus in Aries retrograde, Mercury in Aries retrograde, moving into Pisces, and then direct back through Aries. Like, that's our new beginning. So it's catalytic. What's happening now is catalytic. So know where these points are in your chart. And these points are 24 degrees, Virgo and Pisces. I have a lot going on in both of those places. And so it's helping me realize what has come to fruition. Like somebody said, it was good until it wasn't. There you go. That's one way of putting it. The other ways of putting it are some unconscious, subconscious programming has come to light, and you see that you cannot carry that forward. So 24 degrees, because it's at 23:56 for the moon and the sun. And so we'll bump it up to 24 degrees of Pisces and Virgo. Do you have any planets or points at that 24-degree point? Because they're going to get in angles, angular, because this is what astrology is about, angles and relationships between these influences. And so I think ultimately in 6 months, when we have the next eclipse, we're going to see the fruition of some of the things that are changing now. And we'll look back and say what a catalyst that was for whole new things to open up in our lives. So whatever it is here, you already know how to move with it and feel it. Let the grief run through you, move through you, and also realign. That's what the energy is going to ask. So it's going to be emotional, but also very practical, because that's Virgo. Venus is activating the same points as that solar eclipse last year. So we've had a lot of Aries energy. Remember that solar eclipse totality last year? We're still working with that energy as this Aries energy comes to a close, and we now are putting Virgo in the hot seat. So if you're a Virgo, game on, you're in the hot seat. Also, like Capricorn was in the hot seat, now it's Aquarius in the hot seat. And that hot seat's great. It's time for a reboot. It's time for an up level. It's time for you to come into the fullness of your template, of your talents, gifts, and abilities. Like, that's what's going to happen here. So it requires, like the mandala, swiping things away, even if you're attached to it. You know, the ego mind identity is always attached to things. It gloms onto it as its identity because it's fixed. It wants to know who it is by something outside, and that will never deliver. Because who and what you really are, the I am consciousness that lives inside you, is the only thing that survives the impermanence of phenomenon. And that's why the Tibetan Buddhists do this, the mandala practice. It's a practice. It's not for shits and giggles. It's a practice. They are reminding themselves how nothing in this outer world is permanent. So they don't half-ass it either. They actually put deep devotion and dedication into making the mandala, into the intricacies of like that little deer, you know, or that jewel in the hand of the Buddha, whatever image they're making, giving it their devotion. And then they swipe it away. You know, I think about relationships. When people have attachment, I'm going to say disorders, they don't want to fully invest in a relationship because it will probably end, which is really a self-fulfilling prophecy. But what if we played a different game, like the Mary Oliver game, where she says in Blackwater Woods, these 3 things I know to be human: to love what is mortal, to hold it against your bones as if your life depends on it. And then when the time comes to let go, to let go. I felt that one deeply because I used that poem to make a short film about my dog, Penny Lane. And I was very attached to her. I made lots of bargains with God to keep her alive. I made bargains with her soul to keep her alive, a little extra, which she granted. But ultimately, everything in form must go. And so how can the death of something actually catalyze, open you up to the biggest healing, to the biggest transformation, to the biggest impact, to the biggest expression of you? You know, as we know from wisdom teachings, all death is a rebirth. And so that's what I bring to this full moon lunar eclipse in Virgo. There's a lot out there about how scary this is, but it's not scary. If you do the work, if you're a spiritual practitioner and you are used to loving and letting go, then you'll be prepared always. How do you do something so committed and so detailed and so honoring and let it go? That's the human crucible. That's Pisces, Virgo. Detailed, commitment, Pisces. Identifying with that which never dies, that which never changes. Wow. Wow. We get to do that here. We get to be conscious of that here. That's mind-blowing. And our consciousness is expanding. So of course, the ways that we constructed our lives, the relationships we've constructed, the jobs, the businesses, the ways we make money, all the things that we've constructed are of course up for a redo, an upgrade, a revision, because we as people are massively changing. Our consciousness is changing. I mean, we can't sustain it any other way. The way that we are now with 8 billion egos running around, separate egos that can't get along, this shit's going down with that. So we must evolve. We must use the pressure. We called it inside Goddess Convergence, diamond pressure. We must have diamond pressure to awaken in our consciousness. And sometimes what that means is the rug gets pulled out from under you. Sometimes what that means is the very thing you love, like I loved my dog so much, dying. Time to go. Yeah, and my mind wants to fight it. Well, she's not that old. It can't be happening. We've got to save her. Let's pull out all the extraordinary measures to save her. You know, you can feel that desperation inside sometimes when we're so attached. And sometimes those are appropriate. It's the come from place that more gets to be looked at. Where is our come from place? Because we're here in polarity. We're here to work that eye of the needle, which is to be focused, be someone who is causing the matter, who gets shit done, who is committed, who is devoted, who is a rainmaker, and at the same time listens to the deeper inner voice, listens to the feedback coming back. Oh, things are changing. Things are shifting. Can't hold on like sand through your hand. Imagine you just grabbed a bunch of sand at the beach and you open your hand and you let all that sand fall through because you can't hold on to sand. That's this lunar eclipse. Let me see if there's anything else I need to say about it because I've pretty much covered the zeitgeist of this lunar eclipse in Virgo. Well, okay, I've already said this in the Venus activation, but I got to tell you again, you know, Neptune's going to dip its toe into Aries. That's like a huge game changer. Saturn and Neptune changing signs, moving into Aries. That's another signal in this Aries mansion. You know, we're having the Equinox happening next week, the 21st of March. And that is that period beginning of the astrological new year. So again, we're moving more into the new, step by step, sometimes going back and revisiting, but step by step moving into the new. All right. Inside of this eclipse, we've got Saturn. Saturn is conjunct the sun and opposing the moon, which is a reality check. So the best way to get alongside this lunar eclipse, and its totality in the United States, by the way. So if you're in the United States, you're going to feel this reverberation hugely, even Central and South America as well. So the way to get alongside of it is to do your subconscious, unconscious reprogramming work. Now, I like all of those modalities out there. I've done a lot of them, but nothing really gets underneath it like telling the truth to yourself, like big time honesty. Now, Virgo can be very critical. So we don't want to bring in the critical mind. We want to just tell the truth in a neutral way, using the results that have been mirrored back to us about a particular situation that is in dissolution right now. Maybe it's your relationship. Like, how was I really showing up? Well, I criticized this person. I blamed everything on them. Make a list. Who were you being? How did you show up? The ego mind hates that shit. It absolutely hates it. And so it will defend. It will make up a bunch of excuses. It will defend, yeah, but that's a really good indicator you're an ego mind identity. Yeah, but he was a jerk or she was a jerk. So what? I was totally justified in being critical, you know, whatever it is. You can apply this to your own situation. It's really taking an inventory, taking stock, what worked, what didn't work. Reach out for support in that. Have someone else listen to you, get a therapist, read a book on relationships if that's what's happening, and discover who you've been being inside of it, because this is your chance. And why would you pass it up? This is your chance to transform so that shit never happens again. That's the beauty of this moment. So as we said, there's endings. The endings are the conjunction with the South Node. That is closing out what isn't working, correcting it, improving it, changing it. So that South Node says you can't take it with you. That's the past. It's probably karmic. It's what you're realizing isn't working. You're finally telling the truth. You've been on a treadmill trying to make it work, and you are stopping, realizing it is not working. And that revelation right there brings like relief, ultimately relief to your body. You were wondering why you were anxious. You were wondering, if there was something wrong with you. No, it was because it wasn't working. But now the evidence is clear. It has come to light. We have this Pisces stellium, all the planets in Pisces in the late degrees. That's all about the dissolution of something, the letting go of something. And that's why collectively we're in that before we move into Aries. That is through the birth canal, being born anew, incarnating as I am. I'm here, world, as this now, as that old skin has been shed. And now I have that tender new skin. And I can move in life with that tenderness. And it's also a full moon. And we also release during a full moon, and this is being eclipsed. So that's that reboot of somewhere in your life. It could also be the light of the sun hitting the moon. You see something, it eclipses. And then by the time that sun hits the moon again, you see it even greater. Big revelations about you coming to light. If your attention is on out there, you're not getting it. Make the attention in here and be honest with yourself. Oh, yeah. And then the sun's going to help us out. Like there's so much help here. I want to just make sure there's so much help here. The sun is making a conjunction to all those planets in Pisces. And it's going to illuminate something new. And I also spoke in the Venus transmission about some beautiful, mystical, spiritual things that can happen at the same time. Because when we've let go, we're emptying out. We're no longer filling ourselves. We've told the truth. The cat's out of the bag. We're emptying out. We're now clean, pure vessels with no baggage attached. So spirit can move in and through us. And then we have sextiles with Uranus, catalyzing a new change quickly. New light, new transformations coming through. So I want to invite anybody who's really feeling this to jump into my course called Divine Direction, Your Divine Direction. We're just doing this together in an intimate cohort of 4 sessions together. I think it's 3 sessions over 4 weeks. I'll put the link inside of the notes. We start on March 20th, which is the equinox. And we're taking advantage of all this retrograde time to go inward, to look at our patterns, to name them. I like the idea that it takes 2 to know 1. So in groups, we actually get the revelation about ourselves when we're sharing and being seen. And I'm also going to pull out some of my tools with Human Design and Gene Keys, not as readings, because that stuff can be weeks, years to learn, but just pieces that I found to be essential in my path of how do I keep some banks to the river of like all the possibilities that I could possibly manifest. Where do I orient my third eye gaze, my drishti? Where do I put my attention? What are my innate natural talents that I don't even have to try? And this is how I magnetize people and opportunities to me. Those codes are there. So it's going to be an inward journey with some reflection. We have a workbook for you, and then you're going to make yourself an action plan, because Virgo, we're here to take action in form. We're not just here. Breathing is in breath and out breath. It's giving and receiving are part of the same action. It's not just one thing. So we're going to take action. And that plan will come from the inside, not from our minds thinking I should be posting on social media every day. That may not be you. If that doesn't light you up, don't do it. Put your attention in what lights you up. And that's what we're going to discover in Your Divine Direction. So I created this because I saw the writing on the wall for this time. And I'd love to have you jump in. All right, sisters, let's gather all the positive energy that we have generated here and beam it out. Beam it out with love. Humanity's going through it right now. Take a deep breath into this and say with me, may all beings benefit from the merits of our efforts.